And we never recommend living will. In fact, we discourage filling out a living will. You see, there are two basic approaches that you can take with regard to your medical care when you are not able to answer for yourself. One of them is a living will, where you go down the line and you answer a bunch of questions and check boxes and so on as to what you want to happen to you under various circumstances. And the trouble is that the answers you give can be interpreted in various ways at various times by different people. You really don't want to leave that, as it were, that gray area in there, especially when it comes to a question of whether they're going to hydrate you or not, whether they're going to nourish you or not, whether they're even going to give you oxygen or not, right? Cut you off from a ventilator, or whether they're going to, fill you with some kind of a respiratory suppressant. The problem that they have in the name of relieving you of pain, in other words, basically suppressing your respiration to the point where you die. See, there are things that can be done to you that would actually precipitate your death. And your living will can be interpreted in a way that would favor your death. It leaves the interpretation of the will pretty much in the hands of the medical people involved. And depending upon whether they are, shall we say, inclined to decide for themselves that you would not want to live under these circumstances because they wouldn't want to live under the circumstances, they're inclined to maybe pull the plug on you and actually precipitate, even cause your death. Now, the medical power of attorney, sometimes called a durable power of attorney or a durable medical power of attorney, or advanced healthcare directives. In different states, they're called by different names. But I think all the states of the United States have provisions for this, whereby a person doesn't just fill out a living will and check boxes and say, this is what I want done to me under these circumstances, because you can't possibly foresee all circumstances. But you actually name someone. You choose someone who will actually answer for you. And in a medical power of attorney case, that individual has the power to answer for you, and they have to be consulted. And they have a deliberative power to say, I authorize that treatment, or I do not authorize this action, whatever it might be. And that has to be based upon your will, what they know you want. That's why they're there. They know your wishes, and they will stand by them. We don't recommend that one have a medical power of attorney and a living will at the same time, because if they do, the living will supersedes the authority of the medical power of attorney. So the living will can be implemented by people who are not of your choosing to trump the decision of the one you chose to answer for you. So they can be in conflict with each other. Ultimately, a traditional Catholic would want the medical power of attorney because that person would have the medical power of attorney chosen would meet the requirements of a true Catholic. That is to say, if you're a traditional Catholic, you would choose somebody who understands the Catholic moral law and would follow it and would see to it that it is followed in your care, that nothing would be done which would be contrary to the moral law of God, either to, let's say, prolong your death or precipitate your death, okay? And it can happen either way. The real danger is that these days that they think your life is not worth living and they will kill you. So one has to have someone they trust who can step forward and say, this is what my uncle, my aunt, my parent, whoever, or my friend wanted. And they're a traditional Catholic, and they want traditional Catholic principles followed in their medical care. They can't answer for themselves. I am legally entitled and actually responsible for answering for them. Now, if the person is not a priest and not a moral theologian, it's understood that they would consult a traditional Catholic priest and say, what are the moral principles governing the situation and the care of my loved one who has named me as the medical power of attorney? And so there are people who would not only know what the mind of the sick person is and the will is, but they know that the sick person wanted Catholic principles to be followed. And so they can be trusted to consult, and to consult with the right voices to get the right answers and to implement them. Now, ordinarily, what little experience I have in all these things is that these medical power of attorneys or durable powers attorneys or advanced healthcare directors, whatever they're called, in any given state, they have a first choice, a second choice, and a third choice often three choices, so you can name them in order that you want them consulted. If the first one is not available, then they have a second to consult. If the first two are not available for whatever reason, they have a third one to consult. But this gives a certain levels of certainty that somebody who you trust to speak for you will actually be there as your advocate to stand up for what you believe in as right under the circumstances and what you really need. When I said, prolonging one's death, the real danger these days seems to be that they're more than willing to terminate your life because they think that, it's not a life worth living anymore. So they cut your life short, medically, chemically, with the apparatus that they will not give you or they're going to take away from you or whatever. But also, there is something of a danger, and people are afraid of this, of my death being prolonged, for example. I mean, there comes a time when a person's system is shutting down and the body is trying to die. And they can artificially keep the body going, seemingly for days and weeks and months on end. They can even be pumping into the body nutrition that the body is not processing, right? And it's not helping. It actually could be harmful. So, of course, obviously, a person would want to, insofar as they can, choose doctors who have Catholic moral principles and understand these things. But they're good doctors, and they would know, and they would level with you and tell you exactly what's happening. But it is certainly not right to prolong someone's death, and they have a right to choose that they would want to receive this treatment or not. So if it's moral, according to Catholic principles, and the person wanted it, then it has to be done, right? If it's moral and the person does not want it, in the sense that it's, they say this is an extraordinary means of prolonging my life. An extraordinary measure, there's a lot that goes into the explanation of what that means. But if someone sees and knows and actually consults and finds out that, yes, under your circumstances, this would be an extreme measure, an extraordinary measure of prolonging your life, tantamount to prolonging your death, the person could refuse it morally. So, at any rate, the point I'm making, rather than go into the individual cases, is that there is provision in the state's laws for this medical power of attorney. And I'd recommend that everyone eventually, if not sooner rather than later, avail themselves of that. Just have on record that in case they become injured or ill to the point where they cannot answer for themselves, that they have someone they can trust who will answer for them and see that their best interests, meaning the moral law of God, is followed in their care. If you look that up, by the way, you can find various legal sites that talk about these things and actually provide forms for it. But I think it best that you find a lawyer you trust, ideally a traditional Catholic lawyer you'd go to, and who could actually produce that form for you. You'd fill it out, he would notarize it, have it on file, and if anything were to happen to you, hopefully he would be notified and come forward with that. Right. And also the people whom you name would have a copy of that on file. And if they find out, ideally, you'd name people who would be notified right away, that they immediately assert that authority that you gave them in your best interest.